The love story of Prince Charles and Diana Spencer is presented as a stormy tale of hopes, illusions, ambitions, and painful disappointments. In November 1977, the Prince of Wales arrived at Althorp House, planning to spend the day in the company of Sarah Spencer. At that time, the 16-year-old Diana watched the meeting from afar, calling herself a fat, stocky, and unremarkable girl, although she was loud and self-assured. The prince was then 29 years old and, although Diana felt an immediate infatuation, he still saw him differently than she had expected. Initially, Charles did not regard her as a candidate for a wife, and his interest did not amount to what observers would have expected. For a time, the heir to the throne maintained a close relationship with Sarah Spencer, and Diana had to hide her feelings and call them unfulfilled dreams. Diana was to confess to acquaintances that one day she would marry the prince, and she was convinced that he was the only person on the planet who could not get divorced. In February 1978, while on a skiing trip in Closters, press speculation about an engagement began to grow. Sarah publicly rejected the marriage proposal, describing her relationship with Charles as platonic and likening him to an older brother, which ended their relationship. After these words, Charles is said to have felt humiliated, and the end of the romance with Sarah opened a space in which Diana could attract his attention. In December of the same year, Charles invited both sisters to Buckingham Palace, yet Diana still was not the object of his significant interest. At the official reception, the prince also spent time with the actress Susan George, which confirmed that Diana was only just entering the circle of his interests. 2 years later, a weekend trip to a friend's house led to a breakthrough when at a polo match Diana sat on a bale of hay and caught the prince's attention. During that meeting, Diana showed Charles compassion and support after the death of his uncle, which made the prince look at her differently. Their affection developed slowly, and their public appearances began to attract media attention, which commented on both Diana's charm and her future. Their affection began to develop slowly, and the world watched the first public outings that emphasized the beauty of the young Diana. The first public outings began, during which the media wrote at length that she would be the ideal future princess, despite the fact that Charles already had previous attachments. The media eagerly crafted her image as the ideal princess, while Charles had earlier feelings for another woman, Camilla Parker Bowles. Camilla was not accepted by the Queen, which from the beginning complicated the prospects of their relationship and made the couple's love difficult. Despite the difficulties, Charles maintained closer relations with Camilla for many years, even when his life was to be formally bound to Diana. Diana initially did not suspect that there might be more than friendship between Charles and Camilla, thinking that Camilla wanted to befriend her. Immediately after the engagement, Diana read a letter from Camilla proposing a joint lunch and a request to see the ring, which astonished and worried her. Diana's first doubts quickly turned into painful suspicions and a growing uncertainty about the relationship between her fiancé and Camilla. The fairytale wedding, anticipated as the crowning of dreams, in reality proved for Diana a day full of anxiety and a sense of being lost, not of joy. Already the day after the wedding, Diana discovered in Charles's notebook photographs of Camilla and a cufflink marked with interlaced letters, which sparked conflict. The cufflink with 2 interlaced letters aroused her jealousy and became a symbol of Diana's obsession, who began to suspect more than just friendship. Gradually, Diana reached increasingly painful conclusions that there was something between her husband and Camilla that crossed the boundaries of ordinary acquaintance. As their marriage began to crack, reports of numerous scandals, eavesdroppings, and telephone recordings emerged, which further weakened it. In a certain television documentary, Charles answered questions about an affair with Camilla, avoiding definitive answers and calling the matters very personal. A reporter asked him directly about the fidelity promised at the marriage vow, to which the prince replied that he had tried to be faithful until the relationship began to break down. These words did not calm public opinion, but became part of the narrative in which both sides bear joint responsibility for the breakdown of the union. In August 1992, The Sun published recordings of Diana's telephone conversations with James Gilby, causing a scandal. A month later, it emerged that Diana had an affair with James Hewitt, which further complicated the picture of her personal life. In December 1992, Diana and Charles announced a separation, deciding on separation after years of tensions. After 4 years of separation, which was a public testament to their growing conflicts, their marriage formally ended in divorce. A year later, after the divorce, Diana's life was interrupted by a tragic car accident, which shocked public opinion around the world. A few months after Diana's death, British television broadcast a documentary analysing Charles's relationships, the paparazzi, and the dynamics of the marriage, undermining the narratives. In one of the interviews, Charles defended his friendships, calling Camilla a good friend, which only fueled questions about the boundaries of those relationships. From the perspective of time, it is clear that both sides had their weaknesses. He burdened by the role of heir to the throne, she unprepared for life in spotlight. Diana struggled with bulimia and postnatal depression, and Charles had to face the duties of the heir to the throne and his own feelings, which were complicated. Their marriage was burdened by the pressure of the royal family and social expectations, which made every private weakness public and repeatedly analysed. The relationship between Diana and Camilla constantly influenced the dynamics of the marriage, creating a kind of triangle that the media and public opinion eagerly commented on. Public displays of the couple's life showed beauty and elegance, yet behind the facade there were visible growing tensions that eventually led to the breakdown of the relationship. The prince, after the divorce, publicly renewed contact with Camilla, and in 2005 their relationship was crowned with marriage, which closed a certain chapter of the story. Both Charles and Diana, to some extent, contributed to the catastrophe of the relationship. He threw his feelings for Camilla, she through seeking attention and love. Although Diana suffered emotional setbacks, she over time became a self-assured figure, undergoing a transformation from a lost girl into a strong woman. Charles, on the other hand, sacrificed his happiness for his duties, trying to balance being the heir to the throne with the needs of the heart, which were not clear-cut. Charles's behavior and his later comments showed an attempt to justify his own decisions through duty and loyalty to the institution. For Diana, the marriage became a battleground for identity and place within the royal family, where private wounds were constantly exposed. The conflicts and scandals of the 1990s played out against the backdrop of the media, which fueled sensationalism, often exploiting the emotional weakness of both spouses. All the circumstances created the foundation on which a debate about guilt, betrayal, and responsibility for the breakdown of the royal union was born. Considering the question of whether Prince Charles cheated on Diana, we must take into account both the evidence of close relations with Camilla and the context of royal obligations. Diana repeatedly described her feelings and wounds directly, which made her relationship with Charles and Camilla an object of public sympathy. On the other hand, Charles's statements in interviews testify to ambivalence. On one hand, a defense of friendship, on the other, an admission that he had tried to be faithful. Analysis of events leads to the conclusion that the marriage did not have a simple culprit, but was the result of complex emotions, histories, and external pressures. From the perspective of witnesses and biographers, their affection was doomed from the start to problems because of Charles's earlier attachments to Camilla. At the same time, Diana brought to the relationship youthful hopes, public sensitivity, and a desire to be loved, which was not always reciprocated. Both women, Diana and Camilla, competed for Charles's affections, and their relationships with him influenced the further course of events in the prince's personal life. As a result of media revelations, recordings, and public comments, the marriage was put to the test, which it ultimately did not survive. Although the question of infidelity remains in the realm of judgments, the material indicates that Charles led an emotional life inconsistent with his wife's expectations. One must not, however, forget that Diana also sought relationships outside the marriage, which further blurs the boundaries of a clear-cut assessment of infidelity. Their story remains a complicated example of how love, loyalty, and duty can collide, leading to irreversible consequences. At the end of the story, there appears the fact that after the separation, Charles found again a relationship with Camilla, which later led to marriage. From Diana's narrative perspective, her life tragically ended as a result of a car accident, which left questions about how things would have proceeded. The whole material forces reflection on the nature of betrayal. It is not always a single act, but a long process of behaviors, choices, and emotional neglects.